episode that you've all been waiting for, well, now it's here. So in today's episode we'll do a deep dive into one of the pieces sent in on the Artheim Discord, link down below. And this one is sent in by Vega, or Skrymtet. First Overpaint submission, a piece I did 2 years ago, and I think it's horrendous, but I feel like it has potential and could actually look cool if given some love. So this is the piece that they sent in, and I am absolutely stoked to get started on this. So let's go over to Photoshop and begin. I love how this looks. I love the theme and like the mood of it. Looks like a goblin, troll, vette, something like that. Some sort of skrämt in the Swedish forest. Getting some John Bauer feels here. So let's start to think of the composition, because right now it felt like there was a lot of dead space down here and up here. So if we just move this a bit, we'll get this more in frame. So we want to show these pines, and but before we do that, let's look at some references. Okay, so I looked up a few of these. So here, getting that fogginess that we can see here in the back. And also these beams of light, the dapple lighting, and here the John Bauer feels. And since we're going with a monochromatic sort of color palette, as you can see here, it's pretty much just green and blue and a bit of yellow. I think we can create a higher contrast just to start off with by doing a quick gradient map over this and make this a bit more blue. So this will mute everything down a bit, which will make the highlights pop even more. So then we'll get something like this, where it will be cooler in the shadows and warmer in the lights. So something like this, but not exactly. Now we have this large rock in the middle, and that can work fine, and it works quite well, but I think we should add some like big, medium, small. So right now we have this big, like this here in the back, then we have the medium, then we have the small. But I think we can do it even more if we add, for example, a few rocks here, getting the big, medium, small. Let's make sure that since it's bluer here in the back, and I think we'll keep that because it's quite a nice read, we'll try to keep that same blue going over into this part as well, so that it gets progressively bluer. Okay, so as you can see here in this John Bauer piece, it gets lighter towards the front and it gets darker the further back it goes, but it also gets lighter here on the tops. So one thing that I've found is that it's a lot easier to take things that are, well, not yet, like it's easier to deconstruct things and then build upon them. For example, now we're doing the basic environment and checking to see that all of this works with ambient occlusion and pieces like that before we add in the beams of light, because that will be a whole extra thing. So it's easier for me, at least, to work this way. That way you can be more methodical. Now the thing that I want to do is to define some of the shapes a bit more and perhaps like refine them a bit. And by doing that, we'll actually work on the rock to make sure that it looks as good as it can, as well as indicate some of the detail that we'll add later on, for example the carvings as such, as well as the vegetation, and we'll really hammer that in a bit more. And after that, I think we'll start working into the dapple lighting. So this was how it was in the beginning, and it feels, at least to me, like there's some fogginess, at least back there. So I feel like we should add that. Okay, so as you can see now, we have added in a bit of fog and getting that atmosphere in. And it's really rough now. We just used the lasso tool as well as screen, and then just with an airbrush-ish painted in it. And you can see that there's quite a large difference. It really pushes everything back, and I think we can actually push it back even more right here, because now there it's. So when something is really clear to define, your eye immediately goes to that. So we have to be careful with that and make sure we don't have too many of these harsh lines where we don't want them. And if we have a lot of these harsh lines in an image, it can look awesome, but you have to make sure that you're using them in the right place. And you have to distinguish the focal points differently. And now the time that you've all been waiting for. Let's get down to painting in that dapple lighting. I think this will look pretty sweet. So first off, we have to decide where the light is gonna fall on everything. So I think we're gonna do something like this. Let's decide on a cone. See where it's going to put it here at the beginning. Okay, it's more like a spotlight. It's just to get a quick overview of where the light will fall later on. Okay, so now that we have that, I think we'll actually go in here and fix some of the anatomy. Or maybe, well, partly fix, but also partly make sure that we get the right volumes. Playing the violin. I can't spell. Beautiful, looks like Alexander Rybak. Okay, so small change of plans. I spoke to Skrymtet, and apparently these things were not fireflies at all. These things are the eyes of troll, like the ones that they sent me here. So I will try to incorporate that. So I'll do that before we add the light. And now we're actually going to start with the dapple lighting and the light beams. Without further ado, let's get going. And we have officially finished the Overpaint. I hope you enjoy the result. It's quite fun to see them side by side. And I hope that you, Skrymtet, learned something. Also, if any one of you watching want to have your pieces with feedback or just an Overpaint, feel free to drop it in the Artheim Discord for the Overpaint submissions. Until next time. Love you all and stay creative.